Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go into the crazy insanity that most of us experienced this week, not only through earnings, but if you've been paying attention to the global idea of things, China has been absolutely devastating their own stock market yet again. And we're going to get into some crazy news around that. We'll talk about some of my wife's proponents to our portfolio and our financial independence to perhaps one day retire early. But I want to wind back, just talk about this because I'm sure this sums up most of your feeds over the weekend. If we're in the future. I feel like that greatly sums up a lot of our feeds this weekend with the drop of the Apple VR headset that I think is semi a joke and semi like practical to some extent. Apple, man, it's just so funny to see this kind of battle going on between the Zuck and Tim Cook here with this epic VR challenge where Meta's just absolutely been exploding to the friggin' moon, and Apple's just been fighting to keep itself alive after earnings. But I mean, I think Apple's down maybe like 5%, from its all-time high. Apple, man, they're in a very intriguing place, and I have a hard time believing. I know they did some pretty good numbers on those VR releases, but it's so logically impractical considering Meta's been trying this for so long, and gaming and basically virtual, PR stuff is way more popular than like anything Apple's trying to get you to do on the thing. I don't know. I'm really curious. What do you guys think? You think this is, the future for Apple here? I can see where it's going, but it seems so comedic today, and got to give Meta some big applaud here because holy crap, man. Meta did like the single biggest gain in history. I think it was $200 billion to the market cap in a single after hours. Like stock absolutely just went parabolic and just set so many records. So it's nice to see that, from the abysmal days of the, Meta's dead and no one cares about Instagram or Facebook have really pivoted into a 180. And I noticed a lot of people were commenting too, like, can you do a video on the Magnificent Seven and give us an idea of where you could potentially buy them? And I have no idea because I don't know whether they're coming or going. I don't know what the business is going to look like tomorrow. So if you want to make your life super, super easy, just buy the Qs, baby. I don't buy the Qs because me and my wife have accumulated tech stocks. We've done that for a while. It's just kind of expanding on the ownership we have in the S&P 500. For most people, VOO is probably a lot easier. It just depends on what the rate of return you want is. Like if you're willing to take the risk and you want a higher rate of return, I think the Qs are probably the lowest risk to return. Whereas if you want to like start triple leveraging, you could always look at, the ultra pro shares that are like triple leverage. This just comes with the risk that if there is ever a black swan event where the stock market has a major single day, like 30% correction, which has never happened. But if it did, it would wipe you to zero. Like it would take one major event to like end this ETF. But at the same time, like if you think there's consistency in the market, because you go back here on TQQQ, right, and you take a look at these triple leveraged ETFs, and the stock hasn't recovered to all-time highs, even though the QQQ ETF has. And this is just primarily because like when the market dropped, it dropped so heavily on these negative days that you were 3xing to the downside, right? So if you could theoretically buy this on dips, but who knows how far the dippity dip really dips. You're taking some risk with that. But if you've been buying it over the last 5 years, your rate of return has been really nice in comparable to say you're over double the amount of return over the last 5 years in the Qs, but you are taking an outsized risk for that return. I know a lot of people have been talking about leveraging up, but this is, these are things that you can do with a percentage of your portfolio. But I love the Qs, man. I don't own them, but I do respect them greatly. You take a look at the holdings, and this is what you want to be cost averaging into for the future. And I love the way you get Costco and some of these other like really AAA rated like wholesale and just outside of the realm of tech kind of stocks in here too, which is super nice. I think you also get like, what else is in here? I think there's a whole slew of things outside of I think the major holdings obviously make up like I think 50 or a huge percentage of the ETF. T-Mobile's in here, Cisco, Comcast, Intel. Nothing too crazy. Texas Instruments, Honeywell International. I used to think Pepsi was in here. Starbucks is in here. That's interesting. But yeah, I don't know. The Qs is a good little proponent if you want to upper weight without, taking the risk of buying these individual stocks and dealing with Meta going to $90. That's a play in and of itself. Any thoughts on AQN? My average is $12 and I'd love to get rid of them all. We'll talk about some of the Canadian stocks in a sec. I want to kind of round out between what's going on in China. I'll come back to this comment because I'll kind of parry it into our portfolios because I think we did have some Algonquin Power exposure once upon a time. But I really want to talk about China because I really think I think we live in a microcosm of like, we're very blessed, whether you're Canadian or US, you are living in the realm of the most wealthiest country on the planet. So, I mean, you benefit from that in such an exponential way, but you end up living in a microcosm where you kind of forget the insanity that is destroying the world around us when it comes to like, you think inflation's bad in the US, you think there's problems in the US. I mean, you go look at the Chinese market is down like 16% in the last year. It has not even begun to start a recovery, already down 9% this year, and it's starting to hit its 5-year lows. You zoom out, and I mean, we're not even talking about anywhere near all-time highs. Whereas in the US, we love saying all-time highs. It's like our favorite thing to do these days. But I mean, China's in some big trouble, and I got to show you this video because when it hit my feed, I just couldn't get over this. It wickedly changed my. Okay, don't get me wrong. You know, China's been doing some really nefarious things, you know, with getting rid of the CEOs of like Alibaba and Jack Ma, and there's drama here and some drama there. I can kind of understand where they're coming from. It's a different culture. I get it. But this just fascinates me. This is like next level right here.
Now, one of Beijing's answers to the challenge, ban and erase criticism of it. In December, China's Ministry of State Security issued this order: resolutely crack down and punish illegal criminal activities that endanger national security in the economic security field. Apparently, that includes disappearing negative commentary from the already heavily censored Chinese internet.
You got to see one.
所以西方国家独立董事的
This
使
guy
命
right here is like a prominent analyst in China, and he's been saying don't buy Chinese stocks right now. And you got to see that, like, just look at this.
All of Professor Liu's social media accounts are frozen. And when you click to follow him, you get this message, which translates: it is forbidden to follow this user due to their violation of relevant rules. CNN found similar freezes temporarily imposed on at least 5 other Chinese economic analysts.
Crazy.
Also removed from the internet,
啥？
this documentary highlighting economic hardship among Chinese migrant workers.
So China's been doing this thing where they've been like going off of, and I thought it was great. They're like, we're going to put money into our stock market. We're going to start incentivizing people to buy Chinese stocks. And then out of nowhere, this hit where they're like, you know what? If you're going to talk shit about our market, you don't deserve to be a part of the conversation. I'm like, could you imagine all the negative analysts on Tesla and like these US companies and the US economy with their crazy deficits, and all of a sudden like, nope, like just silence all of them. I honestly, I think this is like the worst turning point I've ever seen in like, when it just comes to like the Western, you know, I always thought like Western media kind of overblew, and there were obviously some issues because I have friends in China, and they obviously use VPNs and they use Facebook and Meta, and like they use these platforms they're not supposed to. And it's kind of like one of these things where it's like, yeah, it is what it is, but we can get around it. But I was always like, you know, it's a progressive country, it's getting there. But then you see stuff like this that just come out of the woodworks, and your like jaw almost hits the floor. You're like, great. So anybody that wants to learn about the Chinese stock market is only going to hear the very giddy, happy, bubbly, and government incentivized view. It's like so fascinating to me when everybody's been pumping Alibaba stock so much lately. Now, I used to own Baba, and for these reasons, I got out of it because like, I think early on, I don't remember what price I got out of it at. I took a bit of a loss on it, but I don't understand why people are so gung-ho, because like the perception of stocks matters more than the fundamentals, unfortunately. And I've stated this time and time again. Stocks tend to follow fundamentals, but they tend to follow perception a lot more. And perception can completely make or break a company, right? Like that's like small cap companies that, you know, they might have an innovation, but they're not profitable, but the stock can still skyrocket depending on how people see the value of it in the future, right? I mean, it's a lot of like Tesla's getting baked into some of those future values. But then you get a company here that actually makes great earnings, great revenue. But, you know, the way the media has just been skewing the perspective of these stocks has just completely destroyed them. I mean, it's kind of crazy because Alibaba does more shipment volume. I think it's like 2 or 3 fold the likes of Amazon. I mean, think of the scale and the scope of Amazon and what they complete as a business. Alibaba is doing it like double or triple the size. Yet their market cap is like worth way less. And like, you know, they traded at 10 times PE right now, according to Google. And it's all perception based, right? That's why people are like, oh, there's value. And it's this great big society. And I'm like, that's great. But if the cycle in the news and the perception never changes, neither will the stock values, no matter how good their earnings are, right? And what happens if China invades Taiwan? What does that say for like TSM? It's like another big fear of mine, like Taiwan Semiconductors. And I used to own this one too. But I had to sell it because I just recognized, you know, the fear. And this is the same thing with like Charlie Munger and Buffett. They bought this and then sold it. I think if you're going to get into semiconductors, stick to the ETF or look at like ASML or like, you could play NVIDIA or some of the other chips, but you got to be real careful here, right? Because I don't know what happens to a stock like this if something happens like Russia's doing to Ukraine. Like, what happens if Russia finally gets what they want out of Ukraine? And what does that say to China? I mean, there's so much geopolitical stuff playing into stocks these days. There's a lot of fear. People, drones believe, what does he say here? People are drones. They will believe what you tell them. I agree. The media can still be highly manipulative. In marketing, we say perception is reality. I think that's probably the best perspective. Yeah, I mean, it is so true, especially in stocks. I mean, you look in the world I work into is like a lot of, outside of YouTube is a lot of stock promotion stuff, well and beyond. And it's just building that perception of their story. And, obviously there's good people that work for companies that aren't profitable and they're trying to take it somewhere, but you have to build a perception and that's going to lead to investor dollars. It's a very different world. There is no way for the Ukraine to win. Yeah, I don't get into these political conversations as much, but I sadly do agree with this. It's really sad that I've listened to a lot of documentaries and videos on people that are like that were once upon a time up like really high up in the CIA or so they claim, and they said like the reason Putin's never been assassinated because the dude is way more powerful than you think and he could end the war tomorrow. He just doesn't want to piss off the entire world doing it, so he'll do it slow and grind it until they finally give up. I mean, it's one of those things where the media makes him out like he's some weak guy or something and they're losing, but this guy said they're not going to lose. It's like, and it's really sad too, right? Because then you got to ask yourself from your own country's perspective, is it worth funding this? Like, I mean, how much money can you throw at something that hasn't actually gone anywhere and continues to be a problem? I don't know. It's again, I'd hate to be a politician. To have to answer these questions is like brutal. I mean, in Canada, I just feel like everybody wants to do the right thing. And they're like, let's send them supplies and money. Let's help them out. And it's just like, yeah, but you're prolonging death. Like, can you not just coincide with them and give them back what they had before, like the hammer fell, and just make Putin happy? And it sucks. It is whatever. And, if the citizens want to leave, I don't know. Like I said, I feel so gross just talking about this. It's like, I don't have the answers. Okay. I'm like, it's a horrifying conversation to be had, but it is the sad reality sometimes of the realm of geopolitics. So on a lighter note, let's take a look at the portfolio, shall we? I mean, I was talking about my wife's portfolio here over the week because so many people were asking about the combined portfolios and just kind of how it looks and the decision making at play here. And some of you guys were making some pretty funny comments, and it was quite humorous. But yeah, I mean, it was really, I think, enlightening for a lot of people to see the scope of the stocks and get an idea of like the tech. And I think we're about 70 to 75% ETF weightings right now. I have to do a video and I want to break down like the top holdings based on the weightings in VOO and SCHD with our tech as well, just to get like a full understanding of the direct percentages. But when it comes to this, I just want to joke about it because I just think it's so funny. Sorry, I'm getting bled into the comments here. I really want to talk about it, but it's going to kill me, man. You guys are going to ruin me when it comes to this. Exactly why Russia has 3x the population of the Ukraine. The Jaws are the biggest threat to humanity. Oh, that's even worse. That's even worse. Good thing I said that incorrectly. Oh my God, this is terrible, terrible conversations to be having here, folks. It's so hard. It's so hard to, don't be afraid to speak your mind. So it's not that I'm not afraid to speak my mind. It's just that I don't want to get involved with it from a place of ignorance. It comes back to like the whole pandemic thing all over again. It's like, I get anti-vaxxers and I get your own personal perspective and you have the right to do what you want. But like, I just listen to my doctor. It's like, I can only listen to who I conclude has the doctorate or the degree in the field and has worked on it their whole life, to presume their opinions well above the perspective of mine. And anything I say is just going to be so mute in comparison. So I try and at all costs avoid the political stand. It's like, it's like talking about liberals and conservatives right now in Canada. You want to start a war, just mention a few things. It's like, I don't ever remember in my life politics being so divisive. So it's a shame that we've kind of come to this point. What do you think? Apple's slow growth cyclical, or do you think their growth is finished? Apple, this is a tough one for me, right? Because I think if Apple dips, I'll buy it 100%. I don't think they're finished from a growth standpoint. I think they're just like Tesla right now. And you have to recognize that we're in a cycle of higher interest rates, and it affects companies that are selling high value products. And Apple's just no exception to it, right? So, I mean, it's a matter of just, got to be patient with it. And I really would expect the stock to drop well below this 30 times price multiple, but it's just not. So you got to be a little, cognizant of this short term and how long it's going to last. It's the same thing with Tesla. I think Tesla will start booming again when interest rate cut cycles come into play, because then they can start actualizing some car sales and not have to cut costs to get rid of volume. Speak your mind, bro. Absolutely no thanks. I will speak my mind on what I understand. Not that I'm being suppressed, but you can speak your mind. I'm on YouTube. I'll ruin my whole career by saying one wrong thing here. Ryokan earnings less than a week and a half away. I'm expecting distribution increase. Yeah, speaking of Canadian stocks too, yeah, we're going to get bank earnings. We're going to get all kinds of stuff going on, and the Canadian markets are going to be pretty lit here in the next few weeks. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what the Canadian banks post. I know a lot of people were bringing up, the Canadian banks, because this guy's saying, great video. I will only buy bank stocks this year. Does somebody have any suggestions? When it comes to the bank stocks, I find it real interesting because I'm waiting for that cycle to end where they're done putting loan loss provisions aside. As soon as they're done putting loan losses aside, that's my biggest prediction here. The stocks will skyrocket. I mean, that's essentially what happened to Canadian Imperial Bank, right? Like, they just didn't have to put as many aside. And within just like a month, their stock shot up 39%. I have a good anticipation this is going to happen to a lot of the banks very shortly, including Bank of Nova Scotia. I wouldn't be surprised happens this quarter or next. So just keep an eye out for this. So if you can pick some up now, I mean, I'm not a financial advisor, but like, I'm hoping to buy some before earnings, and me and the wife are holding some shares in them. And I think there's going to start to have a comeback, but I think that'll be limited still. Like, we'll get a jump from the lows, and then it'll probably hold flat for a while until some earnings can really level off here. So yeah, it should be super interesting for the banks. But yeah, this guy's funny. He's like, where did you get a wife like that? I think in the video where I'm really expanding on the wife's portfolio is funny because I know a lot of people, like, usually one significant other or whatever is doing the finances and the portfolio and the investing and stuff like that. I see that a lot in a lot of YouTubers that are comfortable. Luckily, my wife doesn't want to be like publicized. She doesn't want to be on the internet, so I can respect her for it. I think it's nice, because usually women that want to be on the internet are somewhat crazy to some extent. Let's be real. I met her so long ago, bro. Like, I think I met my wife 7 years ago, and we didn't have money back then. I think long before my YouTube era of things, I believe. Is it that long ago? Yeah. I mean, we came up together, so I think it was nice not coming into the perceptions. I think it's harder to date later in life because you have standards. Like, you have, like, does he have a house, or how much money does he make, or does she have a job, does she have a degree? When we met, we were both losers. So we grew in this shit together, man. That's how you keep the relationship stable, is you build your house together, and we start young. But there's no guarantee, right? I mean, there's risk with all this. America is the devil. Women on the internet, OnlyFans. I was just watching a thing, and this guy was going off about how women you got to be super careful dating women that want to be on the internet. It's like, I don't know if that's true. I'm sure there's a lot of good women on the internet, but I just respect my wife. I think there's a good indifference between us. We balance each other out. I'm the more public facing, and she likes to do her own thing and keep private, and it does her well. She just doesn't want to get too into it. But hey, she's comfortable going on, not anymore. Like I said, I joke a lot on streams about how our initial dates were $1.50 hot dog and drinks at Costco. So, that's how we started. Now, I mean, we go out now and we want to travel and do more than we did back then. But I mean, we really built a foundation of what it was like to be broke, and we honored it. Like, I dated chicks, man, where they were just spending money on their daddy's credit card like there's no tomorrow, and I couldn't do it. I'm like, it'd be great to marry into that, but I just, from a moral and from my own mental standpoint, I couldn't handle it. Even if she was my sugar mommy, I couldn't do it. I just couldn't. It's just not my vibe. Were you surprised the market went disappointed when Jerome Powell didn't cover? I don't know why everyone was expecting rate cuts so soon. Honestly, I'm still not expecting rate cuts until like summer to like fall at least. A lot of people think it's going to happen around spring, and it could. I don't know, but I wasn't expecting it to happen anytime soon. I think we're still kind of in this waiting game of, let's just be patient here and, wait. I mean, there's no rush on raising rates. The economy is in a good place. And somebody made a really good point that Jerome's probably not going to try and pull a Volcker where you cut the rates too early and then you get inflation that spikes again. I mean, he has no reason to lower rates. He's not incentivized to do it. The economy is strong. The jobs market is good. The stock market's going up. I mean, why do you have to cut rates, right? Like, he'll do this slow. I don't think there's going to be any rush. And that could shock the market a bit, but I doubt it. I mean, the way earnings are going right now, so long as we don't raise rates from here, I think we're good. Kyle, you don't want to marry a rich girl. Her daddy will try and control you with his money. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think it's debatable on the household. Like I have wealthy friends where you wouldn't even know they're worth millions of dollars. And, it's not like my fiance's parents aren't like, they're well to do for themselves. Just like my parents to some extent now, like in their retirement, right? Like but they don't like, we're very independent of our parents. Like we don't get so much. I'm supporting my parents, if anything, these days. And like, we're trying to help our parents for, well, everything they did for us. It's not, I think, as much about the money. It's just, I don't like relationships where I just feel like I don't like throwing money to the ether. I believe money is energy and it has value. And if I want to throw it to the ether, I'd rather donate it to somebody than go waste it on going to crappy dinners every single night. Because like I said, I make salmon at home. I can make an entire salmon dinner for which it really leads into this comment here, actually, which is kind of funny. Where is it? Like this guy's joking that, I should share my bills on what we spend when we go shopping. But like, he's like, it's great that you're saving money at the grocery store because I'm doing the same here, right? It's just like I can make an entire salmon dinner at home for like $6 or $7 and it tastes the exact same as going to a fancy restaurant and spending $50. Like I don't mind doing it once in a while to go out with friends and family, but people that love doing that all the time just blow my mind. Because I'm like, it's just such a waste of energy and such a waste of value. Like, yeah, sure, you'd making more of a return in the market than wasting it there, but that's not even the point. The point is just like, do you not respect the value of what you're doing? And is that value? And again, if it's your thing and you're a foodie, go for it. But I think there's a lot of people that have money and they spend it like they have it. And it's great. They stimulate the economy, but I just grew up in a different world. Like I've been broke. I've been real broke. I've seen what poverty does to people. I've seen insanity on the streets. I grew up in the less of opportune places and I've seen what it's done to people. And, I just have a whole level of respect for money. I just think a lot of people might not, that come from a much more, blessed childhood and upbringing. The only place I spend money is on a good, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. We do it too. We'll go out to all you can eat sushi. We go out to nice restaurants. It's just, I don't do it all the time, because it just seems so frivolous when you'll forget about it 2 weeks from now. Like you ruin the enjoyment and the experience, and there's no memorable aspect to it. It just becomes a habit. I did my research on this one, and the dividends are big. What stock we talking about here, folks? Too much debt growth. Yeah, good sushi place is nice. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what stock you're talking about here. We got to talk about Enbridge. Those earnings are coming up this week, I think, so that'll be a fun one to discuss. There's just so much going on from the Canadian standpoint. I also got this comment that I thought was pretty funny, because I was just talking with one of my managers about this. He says, I'm telling you, Kyle, you need to get into some Bitcoin, do some research. You won't regret it. So me and my boss, my manager got in this hilarious kind of like debate over what Bitcoin is. And again, we own Bitcoin. We have some Ethereum. Hell, we even have some NFTs. It's very incremental in the scope of our portfolio. I hate talking about it. And the reason I hate talking about it is because I don't know what it is. What is it? It's not like Bitcoin is not the initial thing that it was promised to be as a currency. Yeah, there's Bitcoin Cash. It works great. That's not what people are using it for. Bitcoin is its entire fundamental base is built off of corruption and crime. And I know a lot of people are like, the US dollar's been used for more crime than Bitcoin ever has. It's like, yes, but not today. Today, it's so hard to do a legal crime because you have to do it in cash. And cash is a very hard thing to operate in, because then you got to get businesses where you can funnel the corrupt cash. Like there's so much stuff you have to do with cash that makes it so hard. And great. It's huge. The US dollar is worth trillions and trillions of dollars. I get it. It's used for crime, but Bitcoin is primarily used for crime. It is what made it what it is. It has started the Silk Road. If there wasn't the Silk Road, there wouldn't be a cryptocurrency. Okay. Like I get what people are saying, and it is a bull thesis. Don't get me wrong. I'm not debating that it's a bad thing. I think it's great that you have an asset that has a whole new use case that, does foreign exchange very well, that can get around a lot of the rules and regulations of current governments. Like I get it. It has value in that aspect, but you have to recognize that is a value aspect of cryptocurrency. The other thing is like, what is it? Is it gold? Is it an asset? Am I holding it like a property? Like it's changing the narrative so much because we don't know what it actually is anymore. And if I'm buying it in an ETF, is that just as safe as me owning it in a wallet? Isn't the point to own the wallet to protect myself and have a decentralized asset like owning gold? So why am I going to buy it in an ETF where the stupid guy that's running the ETF, where does he keep it? Where does he store his keys? How does he store his crypto? Is it insured? Like I know Wealthsimple insures their crypto. Like, do you know how complicated and convoluted the crypto conversation really is? Like I own it because of that, but I don't own a lot of it. And I recognize the absurd risk and return that you can get from that. But oh my God, guys, like, come on, let's get real here. I think people need to chill out with the crypto stuff because it's just nobody can actually give me a good example of what it is or what the value of it is other than, oh, there's going to be less of it in the future. And yeah, okay, so what? If there's less of it in the future and there's less incentivized to mine it because there's not enough trading volume, like what if everybody just holds crypto? I think, what do they say? Like 25 whales own like 70 or 6, over 50% of the entire crypto that exists is owned by like 20 or 30 people. Like when you look at the statistics behind crypto and you look at everything about Bitcoin specifically, your jaw drops to the floor if you're like, this could be so manipulated. There's no regulations that really control this crap. It's super risky from so many angles. I'm like, I could just see like BlackRock getting hacked and then everybody's going to be losing their minds. Like, there's so many ways for this to fall through in a big way that it's horrifying. It's a digital asset with limited supply. Yeah, but I could make a digital asset with limited supply. And I could do the same thing. Like so many people, that's why there's better crypto projects. Like I like crypto as business. I get NFTs. I think that's the future in video games. I think it's the future in smart contracts, but that's not cryptocurrency as it is today. I mean, cryptocurrencies today is Bitcoin, the decentralized asset, but that doesn't mean anything. Like there's no meaning to it. It's just what we make it. It's a perception thing. So it's pure Fugazi. It's just some digital thing that has a code that has to be unlocked by an algorithm. Whoop-de-doo. That's not like some frigging ungodly thought up thing. I mean, it can't be used as a currency. It's impossible. It's so volatile. I was just joking with my buddy because he was buying something with Bitcoin. And I was like, you know how funny it is when it's volatile? He's like, I know, it scares the crap out of me because, I buy some Bitcoin to buy some stuff. And the problem is if the Bitcoin price drops when I go to buy it, I'm screwed. It's like, or it goes up. Like, there's just so much volatility to it that just doesn't make sense. What's your reason for owning it? My reason for owning it is because I don't know what, I know there's a future in it. I know it is the future. And the sad reality is the biggest one will always get the most attention because Bitcoin, at the end of the day, it's $1 trillion asset. It's like one of the 10 largest assets globally. And people will flock to the blockchain for that reason. They'll make systems around Bitcoin just because it is the largest and it has the volume and the attention. So, I mean, I'll own it for that reason, and maybe it'll go somewhere because of that, but there's no guarantee, right? But in the meantime, like I'm expecting, like as soon as NFTs and stuff take off in video games, expect like the next crazy bull run. I think the real bull run comes when we start actualizing the reality of the crypto bull run. There's a future in it. It's just not the future today. Makes no sense. It's just everyone wants to make money, and it's so greedy. It's so greedy. You don't think BlackRock? You think BlackRock has your best interest in mind bringing cryptocurrency into an ETF, a Bitcoin spot ETF? Pfft, come on, like they're just trying to trade money off you. They're just ripping their clients because that's not the purpose of it. Anybody that understands Bitcoin knows you shouldn't own it in an ETF. It's the dumbest, stupidest thing ever. I mean, if I want to insure my crypto, I can own it in my own keys, show the insurance company just like BlackRock is, and protect it. And I can just protect the asset like I could insure my gold sitting in a safe. Like, I don't know why you'd want to own it through an ETF. It is just the stupidest thing. Yeah, I mean, exactly. It's just speculation based off scarcity as it exists today. As far as I can tell, that's what it is. Do you think the settlement rates has changed since this year? It doesn't seem like we see meaningful drop until at least. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't think there's going to be major drops. My dad asked me to show him Bitcoin because he's never seen one. Neither have I, Dad. He said, so you buy a coin you've never seen. What could I say? Yeah, and I don't know. It's I get it. There's value to these things. There will be value in the future. It's hard justifying what the actual Bitcoin specifically. Let's just forget about crypto. If I say crypto, it's too broad. Bitcoin specifically is highly speculative. Gold is pretty and shiny. I agree. And it's not limited supply. I mean, I really hate when the gold story doesn't exist anymore. I mean, India discovered like $3 trillion worth of gold. They just got to mine it. I mean, could you imagine if the government just incentivized everyone to mine gold and actually start producing it? I mean, you could easily crash the gold market because, I mean, the demand isn't huge. Gold prices remain like, stagnant. They don't do much. You could crash gold easily. It's not a finite asset anymore. It's everywhere. I kind of recognize that. When you get your mortgage, does your bank have that dollars, let alone you? When you get a mortgage, does the bank have that dollar, let alone you? I'm curious to what you mean by this. When you get a mortgage, does the bank have the dollars, let alone you? I'm curious to what you mean by that. Other than my target date fund expires 2035, is managed by BlackRock. My only other ETF is HXQ. going to Costco for golden hot dogs. Yeah. Speaking of mortgage, I know one of you asked me, how long it would take me to pay my mortgage off, or when do you foresee your mortgage getting paid off? And this is an interesting conversation because I was talking on Ryan's live stream about this, and I want to pay my mortgage. I would have honestly have just paid my mortgage off with the cash we had. We had enough to pay it off if we liquidated our assets, but it didn't make sense because we would have been taxed a little bit more on a lot of the money that hasn't been pulled out of my corporate accounts. Like there's tax liabilities. There's, okay, well, what if the market goes up? And I think this is the thing, right? Because I'm not against debt. Like I'm not against mortgage debt. I get it. I'm not like Dave Ramsey, but I'm more in my own mental acuity of where I'm at. I'd much rather just get my mortgage paid off as soon as possible because I hate debt. I've been through debt. Again, I get mortgages, I get cash flowing rental properties. It doesn't make sense to fully pay a house off. It just doesn't. Because again, like the money, my interest rate is 5.8%, but like the market went up 20% in the last year. Like the money that we put in the market has exponentially returned more than this property has already. So that's why like it made more sense to keep some money laying around because like, I mean, we're damn near getting close to $1 million here between us. Like, we're seeing some pretty absurd returns. So it would have been dumb if we bought all this property, we'd have all our assets in one thing, and then the market would have shot up 20%. I'd have been hating myself. So I mean, it's a give and take, right? But I could see my mortgage being paid off in the next 3 to 5 years. I think our renewal comes up in 3 years because I have a 3-year lock on it at 5.8. So I'm hoping the interest rates come down over 3 years, and either I'll renew it at a lower rate or I'll just pay it off at that point if the market continues to do what it's doing. Kyle, do you see the market correction this year? If so, how big? I don't know. The market correction could happen from a black swan event. I don't think it needs to correct, presuming stocks keep doing what they're doing. I mean, if earnings stay up the way they are, why would there's no reason for the market to drop. I mean, we can see a mild correction, but I doubt it. I mean, like, so what? We see like a 5-10% drop. That's like normal. But if we see like an actual correction, like a 20% correction, I don't think that's going to happen. My mortgage will be fully paid in 3 years, and it would have taken me 15 years from start to finish. Yeah, that's great. I mean, that's what Dave Ramsey says, right? Like, I mean, yeah, we could spend longer paying it off too. I don't know what we're going to do. It's just that we've saved up a decent chunk of money here, and it's just a matter of, does it make sense to pay it off? And in 3 years, our savings will hopefully have gotten to a level where my goal in about 3 to 5 years is to max out my tax-free savings accounts, which is going to be really hard. I'm going to have a hard time doing that. Because I'm going to have to pull some extra money out of my corporation. I have like $170,000 worth of room, and the math just doesn't add up. Cause like, I mean, if for me to tap out $175K after taxes, over like even 3 years, that's like $58,000 a year. Like that's so unlikely without me taking extra measures. But the goal is essentially to get in the next 3 to 5 years. I mean, it's a stretch, but I'd really like to pay the mortgage off and try and max out as much as possible my tax advantaged accounts, because I've got over 100 grand sitting in my corporate account, right? And I think that I'm owed another 40 something thousand. So I could pull 40,000 out tax free. I could put some of that into my TFSA and put the rest of it on my mortgage and knock my mortgage down by like another 20, or split it to do 20 each or something like that. But yeah, I hate having mortgages. I hate debt. I hate all of it. It's just, there's nothing fun about making the bank rich. I mean, I'm paying the bank like friggin', I don't know, the interest they're getting is enough. Like it's enough. So I'd much rather just avoid it altogether. But on that note, we'll finish up with a few more comments here. I know it's going to be a bit of a shorter stream today, but I mean, we've been having some fun, I think. But yeah, honestly, I try and round the conversation back around to, I think at the end of the day, like the big debate right now is it worth owning a property, or is it worth renting and just building out a portfolio? And I think for the vast majority of people, it's going to be worth renting rather than owning. But it's really just a personal circumstance, right? Because for us, we put in a huge amount of money. I mean, like probably, we're over $500,000 now. Like we dumped in a huge amount of money into this property, but at the end of the day, like the money we're saving on rent and how much that adds to our portfolios over time is way better. Because the problem is renting this place would have costed us $40,000 a year, and I'm not spending 40 grand a year on rent. So now our cost of ownership is way lower, even at a 5.8% interest rate with a stupid huge deposit. So I mean, it's definitely relieved a lot of the anxiety. Don't worry about the mortgage being a liability. If you don't have the amount in the markets, you'll make more from the investments than what you'd pay to the bank. Yeah, I mean, to some extent, for sure, right? 100%. But it's a tough calculation today, I think, for a lot of people. I think if you have a larger deposit and you still have enough money that it's worth, like, because you don't want to put all your money into a property, it's kind of foolish from a diversity standpoint. But the problem is rent, right? Like, rent is going up so much, and it's such an uncontrollable thing that I think it's terrifying right now. I mean, you go back to 2019, you could have rented a 2-bed, 2-bath for $2,500 a month. Now that 2-bed, 2-bath is $3,500 a month. I mean, literally in 3 years, it's gone up by $1,000. It's so ridiculous, right? So that's the fear, right? So at least if you own a property and you can make sense of it and you can get the cost, essentially you need to have enough money in the property that it's less than it would be to rent. Because if you're spending the same amount to own a property than it would be to rent, then like it just doesn't make any sense to me. Because you make more just keeping that money and keep the deposit in the market, right? I don't know. It's a tough debate. It's a super tough debate. It's really personable depending on where you live, what your goals are. Are you married? Are you single? Like, I mean, we have 2 incomes. So, I mean, like, we're making way more than enough money to pay our bills and have tons to invest. So I'd rather own than rent. After my mortgage is paid off, I'm going to dump 25K into my TFSA to max it out in VFV and then HXQ and use it for my second retirement, God willing. Yeah, good luck. I mean, honestly, if you can get a paid for property and you have $500,000 in the bank, you could realistically retire off that. I mean, a lot of people think you need millions of dollars, but like most, again, if you're younger, it's going to be harder. But if you get to 65 in Canada, you're going to get CPP. You're going to get so much. But having a paid for property, I mean, our cost to carry this property before the mortgage is like $1,200. I mean, that's property taxes, all your HOA, your utilities, maintenance, all that crap. So I'm like, 1,200 is not that bad. I mean, you know, to make 5% on $500,000, I mean, there you go. You're making 25,000 a year, you know, 25,000 a year, 12,000 of that goes towards your floating your property. And then you have the rest to spend on food and just your basic cost of living, a car, some entertainment value. Like, you could easily, you know, function off $500,000 in a paid for property. So I mean, you know, that's kind of the goal that we have in mind right now. That's like our FU money, is just to get to a point where, like, if the wife wants to quit her job, she can, and hopefully we can do that in the next 3 to 5 years. And not that, like, to quit, it's like, we're going to work. I don't want to give up on like doing crazy cool things and having goals, but you really just want enough money that you're not slaving at a job because you need the money. Like, I hate being in that situation, and I feel like we're semi out of that and semi in it, because we still need to make money to support ourselves, but we're getting close to the point where in 3 to 5 years, you know, we could take part-time jobs and say, you know, we want to travel more, do something else. And it'd be nice to have that freedom. It's been a challenge though. Over 90 watching and only 6 thumbs up. Come on. I appreciate that greatly. Did you sell Tesla covered call ETF at a profit when including the dividends? Laugh my ass off. I do not like those ETFs, the TSLY. I think people are getting that rude awakening that, you know, a lot of these covered call ETFs lose a crap ton of money. And even though they're paying a massive dividend, the dividend doesn't justify the loss. Because I think, what was the promise on this? A 50% dividend yield, and the stock's down 50% in a year. I mean, are you really raking a return on yield max right now for Tesla? I think these things overpromise and severely. Look at the distribution rate, 73% now. Yet the 30-day is 5%. That doesn't make any sense. I'd have to look at the distribution. Like, there's probably going to be some volatility here. I mean, look at the volatility. At one point, it was paying $1. Now it's paying 55 cents. I mean, like, come on, guys. Write your own covered calls. Don't pay somebody to do it. You end up losing more. The amount that it requires to retire will depend on how much money you spend per month. A person that lives off 1K a month can retire. Yeah, no, 100%, right? 100%. Those yield max ETFs are junk. Yeah, I think people are only just recognizing that now. Sadly, a lot of people get sucked into it. That's most covered call ETFs. There's very few covered call ETFs I see that meet market performance. It's very hard. I think you're better off just writing your own covered calls against the S&P 500. Buy something like SPY and write some covered calls, cash flow a bit. Increase your dividends off the S&P. Owning the Tesla stock would have given you better returns, and that's without any dividend reinvested. Yeah. Will it be a good idea to invest in crowdfunding real estate investment? Yeah, absolutely. I don't know about Addy. I'm not as familiar with it. But I think you just want to be really careful with the fees. But I think it's a really good way. It's to get, you know, exposure to private investments. And honestly, I think there's higher returns than there are from REITs because they're not public, right? So crowdfunding real estate, I think if you see real estate go up and they sell the property, like, you actualize that in a much more capital, a much better capital return rate, because REITs can crash. I mean, I don't know one REIT right now there's very few REITs trading at their NAV value. Most REITs are trading at discounts right now, but that doesn't mean they're a discount to buy, which is kind of scary and hard to wrap your head around. But because, you know, REITs do not exemplify the value of the real estate. The only problem with writing covered calls is that you must be doing it in a taxable account. Yeah, but I think there are tax advantages on covered calls to some extent. Just buy CAD banks, write covered calls with the dividends done. Yeah, I agree. Super easy. My best stock is SES, but around 425 a year ago, and it's up to 10 now. Nice. What's SES? Let's take a real quick look here. I'm curious. Yeah, small caps. There's so much intriguing about small caps too when it comes to value. Like, this is an interesting one. Secure Energy Services. Yeah, this isn't even that small of a cap company. I mean, it's a $2-3 billion company. I mean, this is a pretty reasonable stock. I mean, back here, so well, I somewhere in 2020 it lost 1,000% of its value, so it's probably worth like 100 million. So it was definitely a small cap once upon a time, but yeah, small caps is another story in and of itself, right? Like, I'm super curious to where small caps can go from here, because people just have this perception on them now that they're trash. And I can show you so many small cap companies. Like, I'll post a video tomorrow because I got some updates from Parcel Pal. But like, these companies are making almost as much revenue as their market cap. Some of them are justifying cash flows now. I mean, there was one that I was looking at called Abacus Life. And I actually worked with the CEO of this company. This is a massive insurance company. And basically, when they came public, let me zoom out here and see if is it Abacus Life? I think it's this one, isn't it? Is this the insurance company? No, this is a mining and exploration company. This is not the one that I was looking at. I thought it was Abacus. I'm gonna have to dig around and see if I can find it. But there was an insurance company that came public and it dropped by like 60%. And now out of nowhere, the stock jumped up. Like, it went back to its IPO price. And this guy was telling me that like a little while ago, they couldn't even get the likes of like JP Morgan to talk to them. Meanwhile, they're doing like $500 million in revenue a year. Like, they were just crushing it, and their revenues were going up by like 20% a year. They were actualizing crazy good profits. They're cash flow positive. So I kind of get shocked by small caps because like some of them are cheap. Like, you'd be better off taking your money today, go out and look for all these small caps that have been devastated, try and own the companies at the market cap value that the market put on them, and liquidate their assets. I mean, just sell all their assets. You'll make more money. I mean, that's what Buffett used. There's companies that do that for a living. They go out and they find distressed assets, buy them for 50% of their value, and then sell them for market value. They just break it into parts. And yeah, that's how I feel about the small cap realm, because there's a lot of good ones and they're trading like they're trash. It's so funny. Can you only lose what you buy? With what? Yeah, but they're defined as a position. Energy companies lost 90% in 2020 because of COVID. Oil was negative price temporarily, the perfect time to buy. Yeah. In fact, the best story that came out of that was there was a kid that thought he was a smart ass, and he was, by all means. I mean, when oil hit zero, in his mind, he's like, well, oil can't go any lower. I'm going to 5x leverage oil covered, like, you know, puts or calls way out. Like, the guy made a plan, and he's like, I'm going to 10x my money. He leveraged like 40 grand to one of the most speculative things you could possibly do. And anyways, the dude wakes up the next day and the bank says, you owe us $2 million or something, like some stupid, absurd amount of money. And he's like, how do I owe you money? And they're like, well, we locked your account because you went like crazy margined and like leveraged yourself into something that dropped dramatically. And he's like, how did it drop? Oil can't go below zero. And sure enough, oil went like negative 30 or $40. And he didn't realize that because guess what? His bank account has never seen, no bank, no financial exchange has ever seen oil go below zero before. So their computers never calculate what goes below zero. So the guy couldn't even see a number below that. And basically the bank covered his losses because they realized it was their mistake. But basically, if he could have held those options, he would be up millions of dollars. And I'd be pissed because I would tell the bank to go F themselves and they owe me millions. Because basically like a month or two later, oil started to recover or got back in the positives or whatever, and they would have made a fortune. But I mean, it's so funny how people figure this stuff out, and it's just so convoluted that it doesn't actually work to their favor. Is it better to buy a house or a Plex? Which you live in, a house in a house and house hack? No, I'm not me, Kevin. I don't give a shit about margins on like fixing homes up and buying them undervalued. If anything, I overpaid for this property. We just own a condo, right? So it's I like I said, I just wanted a place to live, man. I don't want to go and find a distressed home I can fix up. I was fine fixing something up, but I'm like, I just don't want to deal with it. I hate real estate. I hate it. I don't want anything to do with it. It's not passive. It's not fun. It's not good. I mean, if you love real estate, go for it, but it's not a passive asset by any metric. I hate it. So I'd rather just have a place to live, control my expenses, and just pay it off as early as possible. I have 25% of my portfolio in covered call ETFs, but I use the dividends to buy non-leveraged call ETFs, and I have been increasing my fixed income amount. Well, good for you. I mean, there's nothing wrong with covered calls. I don't like. For some people, they're great. They're in retirement. There's good ones for sure. I just feel like the vast majority underperform the market, and it's just easier to own the S&P 500 if you're not retiring tomorrow. It's just had such better returns. Only con is USD and a TFSA would be if you're calculating dividends on the stocks. Yeah, I love REITs. I hate real estate. Yeah, I agree. I'm in a similar boat. You make way better returns owning real estate than owning REITs to most extents. But I mean, look at Canada. If you bought a house in 2019, I mean, you could have bought a property in 2018 for like 350, 400,000. That same property now is worth like 800,000 to $1 million. If not $1 million. I mean, you could have like made a huge return. I don't know too many REITs that have like doubled up that well. Will the missus join you on a live stream? Probably never. It'd be fun. I would love to get her to do it. Maybe one day, who knows? But for now, my wife is very doesn't really care. It's not her vibe. How much was your condo? If you're comfortable sharing, our condo was under 700. Yeah, I mean, we got super lucky with it. I can give some transparency on this. I don't really care. I don't think it matters. But I looked at 30 different properties over about 9 months. And I got a lot of quotes. I had to drop one realtor because one realtor told me, hey, like, you have a decent amount of money. Like, why not just put a minimum deposit down, put the extra money in an account, use that money to float the property for the next 3 to 5 years and see where you're at, and just buy $1.5 million property. And I basically told them politely to go F yourself, but I'm like, I'm not doing that. Like, I'm not leveraging myself that bad. I don't want, it's just too crazy, right? So we ended up finding another realtor that more coincided with what we were looking for, because new builds in like GTA, like we looked at a new construction that was going to be done in 2 years, and they gave us a quote on an 850 square foot property. It was $900,000 plus $60,000 for parking. I also politely told them to go F themselves, because I'm not, by the time you're done with closing costs, you're $1 million into an 800 square foot apartment. I am going to go retire in Alberta for that kind of money. So no thanks. Like, you know, I just can't bring myself to do that. That'll never happen. I'm not going to own $1 million, 800 square foot property. It's just stupid in my eyes. It's obviously like New York. I mean, you go to New York, $1 million doesn't get you shit. But I get it. You know, I'm picky. I'm being frugal. I'm looking around, right? So we come across these buildings that are 30 years old, and oh my God, one of them was like fully redone. Like, they refurnished the whole thing, and it was like, I don't think refurnished. It didn't come with furniture. I'm sorry, but they like fixed the whole thing up, and it was 1,300 square feet. I'm like, where in Toronto can you find 1,300 square feet for under $1 million? I was just blown away by what we got here. Like, I'm so happy with the purchase just because the space we have, 2 full bed, 2 full bath. We have full dining space, a full living room. We have an enclosed, it's a corner unit too. So we have wraparound glass all the way around the condo. You know, we've got an enclosed balcony so we can use it year round. We have a full kitchen. You can put a full kitchen table in. I mean, it's just, the space is awesome. I have room to play VR. I mean, I couldn't ask for it any better. Now, it was expensive still for Toronto, because like you went to Vancouver and bought like a penthouse for the same price. But for Toronto, I mean, this is a beauty. It's a gem for us. Kyle, the property taxes are high in Alberta. Yeah, but again, you're paying like $200,000 for the same kind of property. I mean, yeah, who cares if you're paying? Like, we're paying more for maintenance because it's an older building, but we save $400,000. I'm like, you know, I don't mind paying a bit more maintenance if I'm not spending $1 million on the property. Again, go in Toronto and find me 1,300 square feet. Trust me, it took me a long time. It was a very annoying endeavor. I've done some house tours. I can do another one. I mean, if you guys, I could pull it up now, but maybe I'll do it later. I mean, like I said, we got super lucky. But again, just look around. Go look for older buildings. Save yourself the headache. The condo fees are insane. So our condo fee is, at full transparency, it went up a lot. I mean, it's already gone up because of inflation. Originally, it was $894. I think now we're paying $948 or something. Because of inflation, it went up a lot this year. But again, I don't mind paying $950 a month for what the luxuries that we have here. Because again, we have heated garage, underground. We have full security. You know, we have indoor outdoor pools and indoor badminton. We've got 3 squash courts. You've got like party rooms. You've got 3 saunas. One of them's communal hot tub. I mean, we have a full gym. I mean, there's just so many amenities here that it's like the old buildings were built for comfort. So, I mean, I don't mind paying for that comfort, right? Especially if it's only $9.50 and it's all inclusive. It's heat, water, the whole 9 yards. I'm buying China ETFs. They look cheaper than good luck with that. I would love to see you make a video on what you do if you are at retirement age and have savings when it comes to investing. Sorry, let me reread that. I would love on what you do if you're at retirement age and you have no savings. Oh, you're screwed. I know people like that. I mean, people have to work into their retirements. There's a lot of people like that. I'm not going to say who, I don't want to get into trouble, but I know people directly that are at retirement and they certainly aren't going to be able to retire. And it was not of their fault at all. It was just, unfortunately, just bad circumstances between things they were doing in life. And, you know, unfortunately, some people do get wrecked. You're only one step away from being homeless. I mean, there's a story of a guy that I won't get into it, but this kind of came full circle for me. But there was a story I read once of a guy that was just driving normally, and some 16-year-old ran a stop and ended up unaliving his wife and his 3-year-old daughter in the back seat. And because he hit the passenger side where his wife was and the daughter in the back. And the dude blacked out in court and tried to assault this 16-year-old, basically jumped this person. And he got charged and ended up spending, like, I think 6 or 8 months in prison. And over that time, he lost his house, he lost everything, and he was in a homeless shelter. And I'm like, you know, this guy had an entire life together, and he was staying at a homeless shelter in Toronto. And it was funny because I met somebody at a job I used to do that was actually telling me, because she knew the guy personally. And she said, yeah, it's sad. Like, a lot of these people don't want to be homeless. It's just an unfortunate, you know, fact of reality for unfortunate circumstances. So, I mean, I never shun anybody that's in those places, because, you know, sometimes it's not up to their fault. Some of them it is, but not all of them. I'll never be lazy enough to want to retire. Yeah, I agree. I'll never want to probably retire either, but you just want to have freedom to say what you want, do what you want, and quit when you want. So keep that in mind, man. It's not about retirement. It's just about not having to struggle and, you know, being able to take your family out for dinner. Like, you know, that's real retirement. Kyle, what books do you read? I don't read any books. I'm terrible. And most books are so outdated today with finance and stuff like that. I used to read some books, and I used to be into psychology. I used to be really into psychology and sociology once upon a time. I used to do hypnosis. Like, I used to do full shows, and I used to talk a lot about just the craziness of, you know, people's perception of things. I gave up on pro music career to go into the corporate world. I'm going back into music when I fire. So yeah, I'm in a similar boat, man. Like, I was in the entertainment industry for over 10 years. I was my living, you know, full-time magician. I worked with a business partner that ran a DJ and production company. I traveled. Everything from like working with huge corporate events. I mean, we used to perform for audiences up to like 8,000 people. I mean, I was there. I was in it. It was fun. But I don't want to go back to it, to be honest. I always debate if I'd ever want to get back into the entertainment world, but it's a lot of work. And honestly, I like this cushy work from home life in the corporate world. And I love finance. So I'm very fortunate that I could do this and still love it. Early retirement for me is getting up at 5 a.m., scrape snow off my car, attend the boss's needs. I want to make my own hours, and freedom, I agree. Doing good, buying, selling, not selling, increased dividends. I always say I can't retire, but when people think retirement, they think a person stops working. To me, retirement means because I want to and love it. Yeah, no, obviously, right? Like, you want to love what you're doing. You know, so anyways, I'm gonna stop rambling here, folks. I do appreciate it. I love everyone talking about retirement and their perspectives on it, for sure. And yeah, just, I mean, you know, take life in strides. Things are crazy. We're all in different paths, but honestly, if you just keep your head down and luck's on your side, and you just keep yourself out of debt here, you're all being retiring early. I mean, most people watching this are probably well on the path to early retirement, if not there already. I think there's people in our chat group that are already retired. It's fun listening to them. But either way, folks, you know, I don't want to get off, but I should hit off. My plan to retire, wake up early, get in the car, and drive around the city slow during rush hour. 8.5 years retirement. Congrats. I love that you have it calculated. I always love when people are like, oh, how are you going to retire in 5 or 10 years? You're not going to retire in your 40s. I'm like, well, like, I'm not being cocky. I've just sat down, and if you just do the math, you can see where you're going to be at what time. And so long as you're hitting those milestones, it's not impossible. Everyone can retire early if you have a plan. If you don't have a plan, that's how you know if someone's going to be broke. They don't have a plan. They don't track their finances. keep your head up in failure and down in success. I 100% agree. Thanks, Kyle. Have a great weekend. You too, man. I'm going to retire before 50. Honestly, you know, anybody retiring anywhere below 50 is like way, way, way beyond anything that's current. Drive slow using self-driving vehicle. Well, anyways, folks, I'm going to get out of here. Stay cool, stay awesome. Peace.